Hello, live from a dysfunctional Capitol in Washington, D.C. I'm here in the Capitol Complex, and this is Congressman Brad Sherman. I'm from America's best named city, Sherman Oaks, and we're having another one of our telephone town hall meetings. First, a little logistics. Write down the following phone number, 855-920-0548. If we get disconnected, just dial that number, and you'll be right back into the town hall. And also, on September 4th or September 5th, we'll have our next telephone town hall. You'll be able to dial in at 855-920-0548. And if you want to know when our next telephone town hall is, it's probably going to be September 5th, but we're not absolutely certain. We've got to work things out with our vendor. But you can find out by going to bradsherman.house.gov. You can RSVP for our early September town hall meeting, and you can suggest a question. Now, if you're not familiar with these telephone town halls, it's like a giant conference call. I'll be speaking at the beginning. We have people who have submitted questions in writing. I'll be answering a few of those, but for the most part, I'll be answering questions from people who dial *3. If you dial *3, you're going to be connected with my fine staff. Now, if you just have a personal question, you need help with a federal agency on something, my folks in our Sherman Oaks office, located right there on Van Nuys Boulevard at Addison, they'll deal with that. And you can, of course, visit us always during business hours. We're located just 4 blocks north of the 101 freeway on Van Nuys Boulevard. But if most people who dial *3 are going to want to ask a question and be heard by many thousands, maybe tens of thousands of residents of our district, so if you want to be in the queue to ask a question, you dial *3. Now, we'll be taking questions for those who live in the 32nd District. If you live outside our district, hey, listen, enjoy, there's no charge. But if you want to ask a question, you need to live in the 32nd Congressional District. And to get in the queue, you dial *3. About 3/4 of the way through, we're going to hear from Lindsay Horwath, our new or relatively new county supervisor. And I always try to have someone from state or local government on these calls because a lot of people have questions that really aren't for the federal government. We have a very complicated governmental system in this country. It was designed by founders who distrusted government and wanted to split up government power as much as they could, not only horizontally but also vertically. And that's why it's important we hear from city and state, and in this case, county officials. Now, some people have joined us just in the last 3 or 4 minutes. This is Congressman Brad Sherman. This is our telephone town hall meeting, and if you want to ask a question, you dial *3. Now, I want to put in a pitch for our constituent service team, and if you have a problem with any federal agency, you can reach that team not only during business hours, 818-501-9200. You can reach them right now by dialing *3. That team is headed by our California Chief of Staff, Scott Abrams, and I want to put in a pitch for his work. Imagine a federal agency makes a mistake. It could happen. It could affect you. Could be Social Security, the VA, or the IRS. You can reach Scott and his team at 818-501-9200. Scott works very hard. He solves your problem, and then I, Brad Sherman, take the credit. That's an outstanding system. Now, I particularly want to point out something, and especially in the summer vacation season of that we're in now, and that is passports. The State Department passport system is slowly getting repaired, but it has been broken for several years. It takes a long time to get a passport. If your passport is even within 9 months of expiring, go online and renew it now. The system works great if you have plenty of time. But if you need a passport renewal or a new passport on an emergency basis, you dial us and talk to Scott at 818-501-9200. Once again, I know there are some people who have joined us. I'm Congressman Brad Sherman. This is our town hall meeting, and you can get in line to ask a question by dialing *3. Now, if you know any young person interested in attending the military academies, that's the Air Force Academy, Annapolis, or West Point, first thank them for their interest in serving our country at a difficult time. And then second, remind them that in order to get into the military academies, they need the kind of outstanding high school record that you need to get into any competitive college, and they need to be nominated by their member of Congress. I get a certain number of nominations. Each military academy is required to take at least one person that I nominate, but we have always nominated such outstanding young people that they take 3, 4, or 5. In any case, you need to contact John Alford at 818-501-9200 in October of your senior year of high school. Now, if you're interested in coming to Washington to see all the sites, you need to call us here in Washington, 202-225-5911. Talk to Sarah Martin, and she'll set you up with all the best tours, especially if you give us plenty of notice. You can see the Congress from the gallery, take a special tour of the Capitol. There are a bunch of things we can do, and we get almost as many tourists as Disneyland, and unlike Disneyland, it's free. Now, one of the things that I do here in Congress is get money for particular projects in the West and South San Fernando Valley, or the parts of the West Side that I represent. And the Republicans, though, have peculiar rules, and as you know, they are in the majority here in the House of Representatives. We cannot ask for money for health or education. They don't like health because some health care is provided to women, and they don't like education because they're afraid that some of the education will be woke. But we do have a number of other projects that we're able to seek funds for, and I look forward to describing those if we get a question about it. Again, for those who have joined us in the last 2 or 3 minutes, this is Congressman Brad Sherman's telephone town hall. You dial *3 to get in line to ask a question. Now, I serve on the Financial Services and the Foreign Affairs Committee. A lot is going on with foreign affairs. What your television isn't telling you is there are 19 million people in extreme food insecurity due to the multi-sided civil war in Sudan, and that we have lost 600,000 people in Tigray. Thank God that war is is partially resolved, and and of course the area of Tigray is in northern Ethiopia. And I'm focused on Pakistan, where Imran Khan, the person who has got the most votes of any of the people running in Pakistan, is in jail on charges that have yet to be well documented. We also have seen 120,000 plus refugees from Artsakh. The army of Azerbaijan has ethnically cleansed the entire very small country of Artsakh, deporting all of its citizens to Armenia or forcing them to flee. In China, we see not only the risk to Taiwan, but almost 1 million people, or roughly 1 million people, in camps set up for the Uyghurs. And of course, you're all aware what the TV does cover is Ukraine and Gaza. Now, this is a government town hall. People have called me and tweeted, "Oh, why haven't you endorsed a candidate for president?" Of course I have. It is who you'd expect. It was extremely early, but I can do that only on my non-governmental platforms. And this call and the Twitter account with the most followers that a lot of people view is governmental and has to live by strict rules. I look forward to talking to everybody when I'm back in Southern California. I will be at most of the concerts in the park in August that, of course, take place in Warner Center each Sunday afternoon. I want to hit on some of the important issues that have confronted us here in Washington and then open it up to questions. First is the terrible attempted assassination of Donald Trump. Yesterday I voted to create a congressional commission to investigate that. Line of sight has been a critical thing for the Secret Service to look at ever since 1963, when there was line of sight between where President Kennedy was in an open car, a convertible, and the Texas book depository where Lee Harvey Oswald had a clear shot. And yet the roof in Butler, Pennsylvania was not controlled. And among the many things I expect this commission to look at is what about all the other appearances of Biden and of Trump? Was this the only roof that they didn't secure? Or did they again and again and again violate the lessons that we learned tragically in 1963? Yesterday, we saw a speech by Prime Minister Netanyahu. He, I think, did a very good job of making Israel's case. We saw one of the things that he illustrated was just how tragic and terrible urban warfare is. When you have tens of thousands of armed men who fight from apartment buildings and schools, you have civilian casualties. The number one expert that we have in the United States on urban warfare is John Spencer, who teaches urban warfare at West Point. And he has pointed out that the Israelis, on the one hand, have no doubt been responsible for quite a number of civilian casualties, and on the other hand, have conducted themselves better than any military ever has in trying to avoid civilian casualties of the opposing side. We need to see a two-state solution. I was disappointed that Prime Minister Netanyahu has backed off from his support of a two-state solution. On the other hand, the Prime Minister of Israel has re-accepted the U.S., Egypt, Qatar proposal for a three-step immediate ceasefire. Hamas has so far rejected that proposal. And so while many are screaming ceasefire now, they're screaming it in the wrong direction. It is Hamas that refuses to have an immediate ceasefire. With regard to Biden, Harris, and Trump, all I can say is this will be the first time this century that either major party nominates a Californian. We Californians have seen go from our state into the White House Herbert Hoover, Richard Nixon, and Ronald Reagan. And the first two, I think, are widely discredited. And while Ronald Reagan was a very charismatic individual and an excellent actor, I disagreed with just about all of his policies, especially his changes in the tax law that are responsible for so much of the federal debt that we have today. So I hope that if we do elect a Californian, she acquits herself better than at least my estimate of the three Californians who have been in the White House. I will point out that our 32nd Congressional District has a lot of famous people who live among our 750,000 residents. Perhaps one of the most famous is George Clooney, who my wife insists is the second best looking man who lives in our district, and Vice President Harris, who lives in Brentwood and has lived there ever since she married Doug Imhoff since 2014. But this is going to be a close presidential race, and I'm sure we'll hear from partisans of both or many different parties as we proceed with this town hall. Finally, I speak to you just a day before the beginning of the Paris Olympics, which leads us to be interested in the Los Angeles Olympics, which are coming up in just 4 years. We are going to see in the San Fernando Valley, in our district, 3 Olympic events: BMX bicycling, archery, and what could be more Valley and more Los Angeles than Olympic skateboarding. And these Olympics, of course, will take place between July 14th and July 30th of 2028, 4 years from now. There will also be in our district on the west side, right on the Brentwood Palisades border, at the Riviera Country Club, Olympic events. We don't know what those events will be. They will close, they'll try to minimize the number of streets that are closed for the Olympics. They will be bringing in, tripling the number of buses that are operating, and there will be some lanes that are identified as bus-only lanes. So I realize it's just now time to watch the Paris Olympics, but I think we're all looking forward to Los Angeles 2028. With that, I hope a number of you have dialed *3, and I'll ask Johan, who do we have on the line to ask a question?
Yes, Congressman, we have Ken Casey from Sherman Oaks. He's got a question regarding the Democratic nomination process.
Okay. And Ken, before you do that, I want to point out to people that we're going to have survey questions. So even if everybody can't voice their views orally, because we have a limited amount of time, we will end right around 10 minutes after 8. If we go past that, our vendor charges us a lot more money. But everybody will be able to respond to these survey questions, and we'll announce the answers during the town hall. So, Ken, what's your question?
Hi, thanks for taking my question, and thanks for your service. My question is regarding the presidential race. I was, just to preface, I am thankful that Biden did bow out and did the right thing. But I am wondering why it is that we can't have an open primary. To me, it feels like this is not a true democracy. If someone is just crowned without the voters having a chance to weigh in, it's we the people that are deciding who our nominee is and our president is. And while I think Kamala would make an excellent president, I don't know if she has the best chance at beating Trump. And we should have had a decision, an opportunity to weigh in for that. I would say it's more like I said, it's a bit of a hypocrisy when we are calling out Donald Trump for trying to dismantle our democracy, and we can't come up with a solution for watch what France did in 4 weeks. So please, why can't we have an open primary? Thanks for taking the question.
Well, the French election officials have systems ready to go with the anticipation of having one election followed by another. And they can even have snap elections. We here have a fixed election date in November, and we expect the candidates to make their case over a period of months. Whenever you vote in a primary, you are voting not just for a candidate, but for a team of delegates. In this case, our district voted overwhelmingly for Biden. And then after that election, there was a much less publicized election for Biden loyalists to run to become delegates to represent our district. And by the way, I'm describing a system that works for both parties. and I want to keep this as nonpartisan as governmental as possible. It would have worked the same way under the rules of the Republican Party, very similar way. So these delegates reflect the views not only of those who voted for delegate, and we had about 1,000 people who participated in that, and every Democrat in our district could have. I think there was more than 1,000, maybe 1,200, 1,300. But these were delegates that had to pledge their loyalty to Biden and were reviewed by the Biden campaign to make sure that, and I had friends who wanted to run for delegate. They had tweeted something that was critical of Biden. The Biden campaign couldn't be sure that they were loyal to Biden. They crossed them out. So we don't have the time to take that really 5 or 6 month process that we went through, where we chose between like Marianne Williamson and nobody serious ran against Biden. But that's a long process, and to repeat that and have a candidate and be ready by November 5th, I don't think there's a way for that to work, unless you have the established system that say France has, where they've got election officials, et cetera. And even there, they don't. While France has done this quickly, the individual parties in France nominated their candidates long ago. So under party rules, and the Supreme Court has ruled again and again that the Democratic Party, the Republican Party, get to write their own rules. We have these delegates. The delegates are supposed to vote in August. There's a little hiccup as to whether that would be on August 7th or on August 21st, but in August. And those are the delegates who get to decide. They are all reflective of the Biden approach. They're all loyal to Biden. And when he bowed out, every Democrat could run. All you need is to get 300 signatures of delegates, and there are 4,000 delegates. Nobody has gotten in except Kamala. So whether you have an open process with the delegates, a closed process with the delegates, I've got a list in my mind of the 15 most prominent Democrats in this country. One of them is Kamala Harris. She's running. The other 14 have all endorsed her. So I think that when Biden was running, somebody could say, look, he's a bit old. Why don't we have Gavin Newsom run against him? Well, Gavin didn't do it. Why don't we have Greta Thunberg run against him? She didn't do it. Dean Phillips, a colleague of mine, relatively junior colleague of mine, was the only elected official to step forward. He did it, and he got 1% of the vote. Marianne Williams, who lives in our area, I think also got 1% of the vote. But basically everybody voted for Biden, and nobody serious ran against him. And then we saw that a second time after Biden rose out. Harris put her name in. Nobody serious ran against. So I think that people voted for the philosophy of the Biden-Harris administration. They voted for that philosophy overwhelmingly. They voted for Biden-Harris delegates to make the decision in August at the convention in Chicago. And look, we also have an electoral college. When you go to vote for Harris or for Trump or for Kennedy Jr. or whoever, you're really voting for a team of, I believe it's for California, 54 electoral college members who will meet and really cast California's votes in early December. And then we all know that vote gets certified in early January, and we saw that process on January 6th last time. And if, for any reason, if they're all Harris electoral college votes, and for some reason she pulls out, or if you happen to be living in Texas and they're all Trump people, and Trump pulls out, those electoral college votes would then be cast by those people who are loyal to that Trump or Harris philosophy for somebody who's still running. So it's not an instantaneous system. It's not a system where if somebody pulls out, we instantaneously have an election and list all the candidates. But in this case, if we listed all the candidates, there's only one serious candidate for the Democratic nomination, and her name is Harris. So the rules have been followed. The one quirk is that we scheduled our convention for mid-August. Then Ohio declared that we had to give them our nominee by August 7th. So we then moved to a virtual system to have the delegates vote, but the same delegates is going to be there in Chicago vote on August 7th. Then Ohio changes their rules and says, nah, you can give us the answer in mid-August. But then Ohio's change in the rule is, under Ohio law, effective on September 1st. So we have to decide whether to open ourselves up to possible lawsuits that were not in compliance with Ohio law or do it virtually. That would matter a whole lot if there was several viable candidates, but there are 4,000 delegates. The vast majority of them have already signed a petition saying they're voting for Harris. There is no other serious candidate, and whether it's done on August 7th or with great fanfare and television coverage on August 21st, it's the same people, and they've all signed up for Harris. So there's probably more detail than you'd want. If Biden had bowed out a year ago, we would have had a very different process. Although who knows? Maybe again, Gavin would and Greg Whitmer and the others would have all bowed out, and we'd still have Harris running unopposed. That's our situation. Let's go on to the next question.
All right, Congressman, I got Hannah from Tarzana wants to talk about the Netanyahu speech. Hannah.
Hello, Hannah.
You are now live.
Hi.
Hi.
So I was pretty disappointed that half of the Democrats in Congress did not they boycotted the speech by Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. I'm finding that the Democratic Party is leaning more and more left and more anti-Semitic and contra-Zionist. I'm wondering your thoughts about it, because it's quite disappointing and really leaning much of the Jewish populace to lean away from the Democratic Party. What are your thoughts about that?
Well, there are a lot of supporters of Israel, and it's not just American Jews. Israel is overwhelmingly popular, and helping Israel at this critical time is overwhelmingly popular in every poll, and only 2% of the people answering that polls are Jewish. I not only attended the speech and clapped at all and gave a standing ovation at many appropriate times, but I was part of the special escort committee that greeted the Prime Minister and then walked with him up to the podium. There are a number of Democrats who are quite supportive of Israel and overwhelmingly voted to provide Israel with $14 billion at this critical time. And I think it was something like 80%, 85%. There's a personal problem that some have with Netanyahu, and I put personality aside. He is the person selected by Israel. Israel's our ally. I'm not here to pick personalities. However, the decision of Netanyahu to come speak to the Congress, not this time, but a decade ago, over the objections of Obama, rubbed a lot of people the wrong way, not with Israel so much, but with him personally, and frankly was a very bad tactic for its announced purpose. Netanyahu came then to get Congress to vote with a two-thirds majority, because it would have taken two-thirds to reject the Iran nuclear deal. And actually, I'm here, and it was quite counterproductive. And it guaranteed that the effort to push for a better deal would not get a two-thirds vote, and didn't. So he represents Israel. Israel has a right to exist. Israel has a right to defend itself. Israel is a great ally of the United States. The vast majority of Democrats voted to provide Israel with the tools it needs, not only that $14 billion, but additional funds for Iron Dome to safeguard Israeli civilians, and that also safeguards Palestinians, since when Israeli civilians get killed, that's bad for peace in the Middle East. So in terms of providing money for Israel's defense, 80% of the Democrats, 85% of the Democrats are there. In terms of having a good relationship with Netanyahu as an individual, there are some individual problems, and again, I've been there for every time a head of state or head of government comes and speaks to a joint session, and I can identify the disagreements I have with many of those. So for me, it's not a personal thing. It's the country is coming to speak to us rather than this individual is coming. And then finally, I'm disappointed that Netanyahu has backed away from a two-state solution. Eventually, that's where we need to go. I think recent events have shown that while French-speaking Belgium and Belgium is a two nationalities state. You've got some Belgians who speak French and some who speak a Walloon, which is very closely related to Dutch, and they seem to get along. They've had riots, they've had problems over the years, but they seem to get along relatively well. No one thinks that the people of Gaza or the people of Ramallah are going to get along with Israelis as well as the Belgians get along. There should be two states for two peoples. We've got to go on to a survey question. Matter of fact, we're going to have to do a lot of survey questions. And the first survey question is one I've asked in every one of these town halls for several years. Do you approve of President Biden's performance as president so far? Press 1 if you approve of his performance. Press 2 if you disapprove of his performance. 3 if you're unsure. Let's hear those results, and let's go on to the next question.
All right, Congressman, I got Jason from Canoga Park. He wants to talk about federal spending on transportation projects.
Gotcha.
Jason, you are now live.
Hello, thank you for having me on. My question is, first and foremost, Mr. Sherman, MTA Los Angeles has not performed the way that most people expect a public transportation to perform at.
And I might add, we're going to have Lindsay Horwath, who is a member of the MTA, on in about 15 minutes. So go ahead.
Okay. Number one, from what I can tell, and first I don't mean this as to be, some kind of smart aleck coming on here with you. I don't see anything that you've done to improve this system. Number one, in so many years, we have a crime problem out here that continues to get worse. We have an MTA executive board member staff who hate law enforcement. Okay? And when is this going to change? Number one, and number two.
Let me break in here for a second. I'm here in Washington D.C. I don't make decisions. We all work together. It's all 435 of us. We don't make decisions as to which streets in Chicago get more police protection and which streets less. We don't vote as a group as to whether there will be sheriff's officers on this bus or on that train. I fight here to get resources for local government, but I'm here in Washington D.C. 3/4 of the time of all the elected officials. I'm less qualified and less empowered to decide that police should be routed more here, or sheriff's officers should be on these trains. We will have Lindsay on. I don't know if she will take questions. I don't know if we've worked that out with her. But my job is to fight to make sure that our local governments, and the MTA included, are getting the federal funds they deserve. It's up to voters to pick local officials to have the right local decisions made. And again, if you were going to decide how many sheriff's officers should be, or whether they should be sheriff's officers or unarmed semi-law enforcement, those are details you wouldn't want Congress making those decisions, especially because 98% of the Congress members making the decisions don't even live in LA County. But Lindsay will be on, and I will point out that there is certainly a number of people, including you, who think that we need better law enforcement on our subway systems and on our train and rapid transit systems. And again, the federal government does a number of good and bad things, and I will take responsibility for what I do in Washington to affect federal policy. But I can't, the federal government doesn't make the decisions as to how many officers and what type of officers are on what trains. Okay, on approving of Biden, we've got, where do we have here? We have 76% of you said you approve, 19% disapprove, 5% are unsure. And we're going to go on to the next survey question, and this is one I've never asked. Do you approve or disapprove of Vice President Harris's performance as Vice President? If you approve of Harris, press 1. Disapprove of her, press 2. Unsure, press 3. And with that, we're going to go, as I've told people on a number here, that you want to go to bradsherman.house, that's for House of Representatives.gov, to RSVP for these town halls, and you can submit a written question. And that is exactly what Victoria Killan of Canoga Park did when she asked a recent report released by the Federal Trade Commission on pharmacy benefit managers shows their negative impact on accessibility and affordability of prescription drugs, what steps should be taken to regulate PBMs. And this raises the bigger issue of drug prices and how we deal with this. I strongly support what the Federal Trade Commission has done with regard to PBMs. We are paying an average of almost 3 times what other developed countries are paying for pharmaceuticals. And it's a bigger problem than you see, because you see the out-of-pocket cost. You say, oh, my God, I got to pay $120. Our society is paying way more. Your employer, who hasn't given you the raise you deserve, is paying more and more for your health coverage, and that health coverage plan is paying a fortune for drugs. Your Medicare system is paying a fortune for the drugs, particularly those administered in hospitals. As a society, we are paying, as I said, almost 3 times what any other country is paying. That's why I've co-sponsored the Help Copays Act, which would deal particularly with PBMs and take the savings that they get from rebates and pass that on to patients. I've long supported Medicare for All because you get a much more efficient system with single payer. And then finally, I am probably the leading voice here in Congress saying that drug prices should be subject to regulation. Now, the prices should be fair, and drug companies spend a lot of money developing drugs. And many of the times they try to develop a drug and it fails, and you got to take that into account too. But with all of that, the amount that that the Southern California Edison charges to its customers is regulated because it's a necessity, and they have a monopoly. And likewise, drugs are a monopoly. They only, as long as they're under patent. When they go generic, that's something else. But the newer drugs, the first 20 years roughly, it's a monopoly. It's a necessity. And instead of companies being free to charge whatever they want, it should be a regulated price. So I know that we've had success with insulin and $35 a month insulin for those covered by Medicare, but we can. There are hundreds and hundreds of drugs, and all their prices ought to be regulated. With that, why don't we take a question from the floor? Johan?
Yes, sir. We got Robin from Tarzana who wants to talk about Project 25. Robin, you are now live.
Hi. I feel very strongly that we need to get out Project 2025 because the Republicans didn't want anyone to know. And everybody must know and understand most of the situations. And I think there should be posters. There should be commercials. There should be as much information about 2025. Then people will understand that we really want a democracy and we really don't want one man to rule our country.
I couldn't agree with you more. There will be a big campaign. We've got an election coming up. Project 2025 was put together by a whole lot of folks that are part of the Trump campaign. Trump has said he doesn't endorse it, but the fingerprints are all over it. We've got tax cuts for the very wealthy. We've got raising prescription drug costs. We've got slashes to Medicaid. We've got really an abolition of just about everything we're doing to control climate. And perhaps the most dangerous thing of all is that it ends civil service protection and goes back to the system we had in the 1800s where at least for 50,000 and perhaps a lot more of the federal government, people all get fired and new people are hired based upon their political loyalties. Now, look, we have appointed positions in our federal government. If Trump gets elected, I don't expect Blinken to be Secretary of State. But it's one thing to have presidential appointments at the highest level. It's another thing to gut all of civil service and go back to the spoils system. And in fact, we've got a survey question lined up on this very item. So I've already told you where I stand, and our friend from Tarzana seems to think the same way, but let's find out what everybody thinks. Do you support Project 2025, which, among other things that I've described, also would eliminate the Department of Education, and limit the abortion pills, which, of course, is the mechanism used for most abortions in this country, and, as I've said, end civil service for a big chunk of the federal government? If you support Project 2025, press 1. If you oppose Project 2025, press 2. If you're unsure, press 3. Support 1, oppose 2. We're talking about Project 2025. And let's go on to another question from the floor. And somebody will tell me when Lindsay is on.
All right, sir. We got a Don from Northridge who has a question about the Supreme Court. Don, you are now live.
Hi, thank you. Yes, since the Supreme Court's immunity ruling, why don't we, or could you and your Democratic colleagues encourage President Biden to become king now and relieve several Supreme Court justices of their jobs for ethics violations or for lying on their confirmation about Roe Wade and established, law? Somewhat sarcastic, but I really think it's possible.
I share your anger with this ruling. We fought a war of independence to abolish monarchy in the 13 colonies, and the idea that our laws don't mean anything if the president decides to violate them is simply outrageous. I guess in theory, a president could imprison members of the Supreme Court with extradition, without warrant or habeas corpus or anything, and he's immune. That being said, Joe Biden does not want to be king, is not going to act like a king. Joe Biden is dedicated to the rule of law, and we should only, the Supreme Court's decision means that we have to be very careful as to who we give this extraordinary power to. And I hope people will keep that in mind in November. But it is an outrageous decision. Let's see. Approving and disapproving Harris. 61% of you approve how she's doing as vice president, 20% disapprove, and 19% are unsure. That's a little less support than for Biden. And as a matter of fact, we'll go on to one more survey question. And this is particularly aimed at those of you, well, it's aimed at the whole district, but we have a little bit more information about the San Fernando Valley. What's interesting is that back in 1984, there was a huge movement against having any of the Olympic events in the San Fernando Valley. And so none of the Olympic events from 1984 were held in the valley. This time, the Olympic Committee is putting BMX, bicycling, archery, and skateboarding in the Sepulveda Basin. That will lead to some street closures, certainly through the basin and around it. It will bring these to the San Fernando Valley. And so if you support having those three events in the Sepulveda Basin in the valley, press 1. If you oppose having any Olympic events in the valley, press 2. And if you're unsure, press 3. Let's go to another question. I'll announce our last question. Project 2025. We've got 8% support, 85% opposition, and 7%. Damn, I haven't seen numbers like that since we asked whether you love your mother. I've been in politics for a while. I've never seen anything quite that quite so extreme. With that, take another question from the audience here.
Yes, sir. We have a question from Doug from Brentwood. He has a question about Biden dropping out of the race. Doug, you are now live.
Thank you, Congressman, and your staff for all the work you do. I am really concerned. Before June 27th, I think a big chunk of the country thought Biden was okay, maybe not as sharp. But given what happened then and what has happened since, I really feel like we were lied to for much, if not all, of his term.
I think we saw Biden at his worst on June 27th. We saw him after that, and he was a couple steps better. And we saw him before that, and he was a couple steps better. But nobody said he was 55 years old. And even before June 27th, there were plenty of questions over whether he had lost a step. And so I think there was, as to Biden's capacities and evaluating them, you can look at the high-level mark at his State of the Union address, where he got heckled and he responded effectively. One argument is, he deteriorated a lot from April to June. The other is that all of us have good days and bad days, and that was his best day, and June 27th was his worst day. I think that he has been a very good president and will continue to be a good president for the next 5 to 6 months. I think he concluded correctly that he could not persuade people that he would be an effective president right up until June 20th of 2029, because they saw not only what he did at the State of the Union, his high water mark, they saw his low water mark. And from that point, even if they could say, well, that low water mark, June 2024, is how he is on a bad day, you got to figure that June 2028, when he would still have been president, he would have been a step below that. And so Father Time is undefeated, and I think that we were convinced in 2020 that he could be an effective president through the end of 2028, or through the end of 2024, and we were and we are now not convinced that he can be an effective president through the end of 2028, which is why he's not trying to convince us otherwise, and has backed out. I'm going to take a kind of a combination of questions.
Sir, we also have Lindsay Horvath on the line as well.
Lindsay, we'll get to you after one question here, unless you're on a very short time break. Are you there?
I'm good. I'm here.
Okay. We've got a question here from Christy June J. Madden of Chatsworth. What advice can you give us to help Democrats achieve a majority in the House in November? We've got a question from Carol Vitke of Los Angeles. I'd like to help defeat Trump, but can't contribute dollars at this time. And I'm not going, this is not a Democratic call. This is a governmental call, so I'm going to answer these questions generically for either side, because a lot of people are interested in affecting this election. You can give money to either side. You can volunteer for either side. If you're a volunteer, you can get involved for in our congressional district, for me or against me. Either way, do what's best, what reflects your views. Some people would say that my congressional race is not one of the close ones, and that California's electoral college votes are locked in. And you'd say, well, so maybe what am I supposed to? The fact is that if you buy that analysis, and no election is over till it's over, Harris could lose California, I could lose my Congress. Look, the votes aren't in till they're in. But if you want to go to some place where the experts think it's close, if you're interested in Sacramento, the North Valley is in an assembly district that's going to be very close. If you're interested in Congress, there's a congressional district that goes from northern Granada Hills all the way up to Lancaster. There are Democrats and Republicans walking door to door in both of those races, for either of those two candidates. And if you care who controls the House and you don't have any money but you've got time, you can do that. Likewise, if you're interested in the presidential race, both parties are organizing phone banks, at-home phone banks, virtual phone banks, in-person phone banks. And so if you think that you want to get involved in affecting the presidential race, but you think California's in the bag for one party or another, you can be calling Nevada or Arizona or Pennsylvania for either party. So I urge people to get involved on whatever side reflects their views. And money is one way, and time and effort is another way. We now have as our special guest Lindsay Horvath, the relatively newly elected 2 years ago county supervisor. I'm the youngest woman ever elected to the Los Angeles Board of Supervisors. Not only does that 5-member board, each one representing 2 million people, control a very large county budget and an awful lot of the services that we enjoy, she is also one of the, I don't know how many members, roughly 13 members, but she'll tell you what the exact number is, of the MTA. And Lindsay, you should know we did have a caller earlier who wanted more law enforcement on the trains, and you can address that. But tell us a little bit about what's going on in county government. And let me know whether you want to take a county government question or just give us some information.
I am happy to take any questions you like. I really appreciate the opportunity to be included. I know these telephone town halls are legendary and have been a great source of information for folks, so I appreciate you including me tonight. I am proud to represent the 3rd District of Los Angeles County, which is roughly LA's west side and the Valley.
And Lindsay, I want to point out, you represent not only a lot of people that aren't in my congressional district, you represent 99.5% of all of the residents of the 32nd Congressional District. So if you're on this phone, Lindsay's your county supervisor. Go on.
That's right, and you have been an amazing partner for me and our team, and I know that I've known your great work for a number of years, and I'm just glad that we get to be partners for each other in this work going forward. I know you have done so much for the district, and it shows, and people are always impressed with how you show up, and constituent service is something that's also very important to me. We wanted to make sure that our service, not only was visible and on the ground, but that we brought people into our office who are from the district, who understand the needs of the district. And so we have 3 field offices, one in Van Nuys, one in Calabasas, and one in Hollywood. So come see us at any of those. I believe our Director of Community Affairs, Barry Worth-Gervin, who is familiar to many of you, is also on the call tonight. And she oversees
Hi, Barry.
our district offices. Yes, she oversees our district offices and community outreach. So if you have any questions, you can all reach out to her, and she will make sure our what we call our CAT team, our community affairs team, reaches out to you. So you can reach her at B. Gervin, her last name Girvan, at bos.lacounty.gov. And so that way you can stay in touch with us beyond this phone call. We know constituent services, especially from everything for our unhoused residents to foster care system and our foster youth, to incarceration, to our Department of Social Services, and so much more is the county social safety net for the region. And we know how important it is for those services to reach the people who need us. And so our team is out there and available all the time. I also, in addition to my service on the Board of Supervisors, serve, as you mentioned, as a director on the Metro Board. And we actually had our Metro Board meeting today. And so for those who are focused on safety on Metro, we just approved moving forward with investments on a tap to exit program, which we've piloted at the North Hollywood station that has improved safety. We are looking at additional technologies that provide safeguarding in the stalls, but also detecting metal detectors and detecting weapons, and making sure that we aren't bringing anything onto our trains that we wouldn't bring onto into a concert hall, for example, or onto airplanes. There's a lot of technology that we can use that we aren't
Lindsay,
currently.
when you say safety, you're not talking about making sure the train doesn't crash into the other train. You're talking about law enforcement style safety, making sure
exactly
that
right.
criminal action does not take place on the trains.
That's exactly
right.
And
yeah.
Yes, that's right. And the previous meeting, we actually invited the sheriff, the chief of LAPD, and the chief of Long Beach PD to come and speak to our board about their experience because of all of the safety concerns that have arisen. The amount of violence that we have seen on our system is absolutely unacceptable. And for the life of me, I couldn't understand why we weren't engaging our law enforcement leaders to talk with us about what their experience is and what they recommended. And so we finally had them come and speak to the board. And I think it was a healthy and productive conversation. We need their partnership in order to provide safety on the system. And we also know that there are all kinds of additional elements like I was describing that can contribute to safety, but also to an enjoyable and comfortable experience. And so things like lighting when it's dark, things like having shade when it's hot at a bus stop, for example, those also help safety and security in a different kind of way. But yes, law enforcement is a component of our approach to safety, and they must be, especially given some of the incidents that we have seen. And it's important to us that we keep the system safe. We have seen a month-over-month increase, and we continue to see increase in ridership on Metro, and that will only continue if we continue to keep it safe. So that note is very well taken.
And Lindsay, I want to say for my district, the most important thing MTA can do is build a train from the valley into Westwood. I know we've got proposals. I look forward to finding out the costs of the different proposals, because I know that we won't build it until we can fund it. I have already begun fighting for federal funds for that project here in Washington. It's up to the MTA to decide which of the many alternatives to go with. And the two things I'll say is, let's make sure that we can get this thing built as quickly as we can and get it financed and built. And the second is, let's make sure that we have enough parking spaces at the north end, because an awful lot of people are looking forward to the day when they can, and some of them hopefully will take a bus or walk to rapid transit, but an awful lot of people will do park and ride, and we want to make sure that they got a place to park.
I'm going to make sure all of that feedback is communicated to our Metro board and our staff, because there's a lot that we have to factor in, and you're absolutely right. We have to understand the cost of it, and for my part, I think making sure that we connect with all of the community members and are really clear about what is coming to your neighborhood, that's a responsibility we have in order to do this right. So points well taken and appreciated. And I also, I know that we may be running short on time, so I don't want to miss the opportunity to thank you for your partnership on our work together around addressing anti-Semitism in the region. We have certainly seen a number of brazen attacks of anti-Semitism throughout the region, and we know that this is absolutely unacceptable, especially in Los Angeles. And so your direct investment in the success of what we are launching in our county-wide Jewish community safety plan for the residents of LA County, your investment in making that a success is truly appreciated. And I just want to thank you for your partnership in this effort and your leadership nationally on this issue. And just a reminder for anyone who is a victim of hate or needs to report a hate crime or hate incident, you can call 211 in LA.
Yes, and I've fought to get two nearly $1 million appropriations in the bill that will pass the House. Of course, what passes the Senate, what becomes law, we'll find out late this year. Roughly $1 million for the county's efforts to protect Jewish institutions, and another $1 million for the Los Angeles Jewish Federation to do the same thing. We've seen such a huge increase in anti-Semitic attacks that I'm hoping very much that I can convince not only the House but the Senate to provide this for the Los Angeles community. With that, let's take another question from the floor. This will probably be our last one. And wait a second. Let's see if we have time for one more survey question. Let's see if we. And I know we'll want to give you all the answers. Yeah, we'll do one more survey question here first, and that is, should we have rules on the Supreme Court prohibiting gifts of over $250? We have rules like that on members of the House and the Senate, and the question is, should we prohibit gifts of over $250 or some similar amount for members of the Supreme Court? Press 1 if you think we should have that rule. Press 2 if you would oppose such a rule. 3 if you're unsure. And Johan, let's take the last quote. And on Olympics in the Valley, 71% supported in the Sepulveda Basin, 16% opposed, 13% is unsure. This is very different. The Valley has, I realize it's not everybody on this call is from the Valley, but this is so different from the Valley in the 1983, 1982. The Valley has changed a lot and wants to see Olympic sports, and I look forward to seeing skateboarding and the other two sports in the Sepulveda Basin. Johan, one last question.
All right, I got Edward from Westwood. He has a question about restoring our country's prestige. Edward, you are now live.
Congressman Sherman, it's an honor to speak to you.
Good to be with you.
What do we have to do as Americans to restore our prestige? I'm a Vietnam veteran, but that's beside the point. I'm trying to say
thank you for your service. Go on.
What do we have to do as Americans to restore our prestige in the world? Because right now our flag is being spitted on, burnt, melted on. What happened to the respect that we had as a world power throughout the ages? What went wrong?
Well, we've had these problems. They're not entirely new. I remember how terrible it was you're just a little older than I am if you served in Vietnam, but I was certainly watching the situation as you and your brothers came home, and not always to a welcoming population. We had people burning the American flag in the 60s and in the early 70s. We see that again, unfortunately, and I join Vice President Harris in condemning the people who just yesterday here in our nation's capital tore down and burned the American flag and raised the Hamas flag. Internationally, we I think have a fair amount of respect. What we've been able to do in organizing Europe to respond to the attack on Ukraine is I think a masterpiece of Biden's international efforts. We have, I think, organized an awful lot of countries with regard to China and China's aggression in the South China Sea. It's hard for a nation to be both loved and respected. In that, if the respect that America gets is, people may respect Norway because it's a wonderful country and they've got a good foreign ministry, but the respect that America gets is because we're so powerful, as well as hopefully thoughtful and wise. And if you're that powerful, you're controversial. If you have this big effect, there are going to be people who are angry at it. And we saw that on 9/11 when people who wanted to overthrow the monarchy in Saudi Arabia and replace it with something way more repressive struck out at the United States because of the role that we play in the world. They didn't strike out at Norway. I think we have got to make reasonable foreign policy decisions, and thank God we've got the best military that the world has ever seen, and hopefully we'll have the wisdom to avoid using it. And frankly, I think that the comments made by Trump and even more so J.D. Vance about withdrawing from the world, withdrawing from NATO, are dangerous to our prestige. It's a dangerous world. The United States has taken on the role to a far greater degree than Europe or Japan have in trying to have a rules-based order in the world to promote democracy. I'm very proud of our efforts, and the mistakes we see on the front pages. But you look at the growth of democracy in Latin America and increasingly even in Africa, and you see the effects of America playing an important role in the world. With that, as I've Now, I realize that, first we have the Supreme Court gift rule. My God, I've never seen numbers quite this big. Supreme Court gift rule, 91% support a new rule, 4% oppose, 5% unsure. Wow, those are off-the-charts numbers. Now, I know so many of you want to have another half hour of knowing what I have to say about world events, and you can do that because I gave a speech on the floor of the House today, a half an hour long, and we have it up on the webpage, bradsherman.house for houseofrepresentatives.gov. That's bradsherman.house.gov. I addressed cryptocurrency. I addressed artificial intelligence, a lot of interesting topics. Also, Dr. Afridi, who remains in Pakistani jail and helped us get bin Laden. I want to thank Lindsay Horvath for her participation and for her service representing all of us in county government. And as I pointed out, if we go overtime, or too much overtime, the vendor charges us a whole lot more. But I'm about to say goodbye. When I do, you're going to hear our voicemail system. Please give us your email address, even if we already have it. We've got weird rules here in the House, and I'm not allowed to keep in touch with you for some purposes unless you give me your email address. So please do that, and we will keep in touch with you. And you can also, with this voicemail system, can tell me what you think about any public policy issue. I will not listen tonight because it's after 11 East Coast time, but I will listen tomorrow. So if you didn't get a chance to tell me what you think during this town hall, you can do so on tape. With that, I'm Congressman Brad Sherman. I want to thank everybody for participating in our 32nd District Town Hall. See you in Los Angeles. See you at the free concerts in Warner Center Park and so many other places. Thank you very much.